You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again and ready and raring to go to talk a little bit of volatility. Yes, it is time for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which all of you folks are having a good time this week. Hope you're having a good trading week out there as well. Jackson Hole Day today, so yet again, the Fed finds a way to just insert itself into the narrative. We'll get to all that fun in a little bit. Of course, if you want to have more fun, you want to come back after Vol Views ends. You don't want your broadcast week to end with Volatility Views, and only one place to go, theoptionsinsider.com. Then tack on a /pro on the end there. That'll get you past the velvet rope and the bouncer, who's very mean, by the way, and get you into a little bit of the old options oddities action. Of course, get you awesome pro Q&As during the week as well, and a whole bunch of other fun stuff, giveaways, early access to a lot of great stuff before it hits the network, and of course, live streams to come in and have some fun with us here on the show as well. theoptionsinsider.com/pro. The place to go to learn more as we learn who's joining us on the old Vol Views program today. First, let's go out to the hinterlands of Chicago. I do believe that's where he is. I guess we'll find out. Where we are joined once again by the once future and now present Dr. VIX, a.k.a. Mr. Russell Rhoads, who is busy corrupting young minds over there at the University of Indiana. Mr. Rhoads, welcome back to the show, sir.
Yeah, last night, the new quarter started last night. I was teaching bonds, baby. Bonds, which, usually it's a tough sell, but in this day and age, people are actually paying attention to that topic. And I'm back in Chicago after driving overnight from Indiana to make sure I was here for the show.
Weirdly enough, you say that and you think, corporate bonds, oh my God, pretty boring. Or even just bonds in general. But I remember when I transferred in from chemical engineering after a couple of years, I was like, I'm sick of this. I don't want to work in a chemical plant in Des Moines for the rest of my life. And I'm sick of learning theory. I wanted to learn something practical. So I transferred into some 300 level, corporate finance course. I had none of the prerequisites for. And I sat down, literally the first day I started talking about issuing corporate bonds. And at the end of the lecture, I was like, wow, that was actually something useful that I could actually go and apply in real life, as opposed to years and years of theory of how fast a chemical can bounce through a pipe and everything else. And I was like, it was just refreshing. So as you mentioned that, I kind of chuckled because that to me was my inflection point that really lured me to the dark side of finance and away from engineering, and all the rest is history, sir. So there you go. You corrupted some young mind last night. Well done.
I tried really hard.
We'll see if you can be as successful as whoever my corporate finance teacher was. As we are also joined by actually not the rockingest of lobsters, the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com, sir.
Happy Friday. It's good to be here. Kind of a weird one.
Kind of a weird one indeed as we get into a little bit of the old volatility review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let's commence operations here on the show. Looks like the live is raring and ready to go now there. And yeah, the markets are kind of raring and ready to go today as well. Of course, it's the day a lot of people were waiting for this week. It was Jackson Hole Day, yet another opportunity for the Fed to just chime in and grab the markets in its kung fu grip. For those of you who are looking forward to a post-Fed market, we are not there yet, listeners, because everyone hanging on Jackson Hole. What the hell will Powell say? And it turns out he gave a little bit of insight into, maybe we are going to cut them rates, you folks. Now, coming into this year, everyone had bookmarked 3 rate cuts already by this point. But hey, we haven't gotten there. But we might get maybe a quarter point. Maybe some folks want a half point next time. Probably going to get something to the downside in September. So markets waiting for that news. They liked it, popping out of the gate. At one point, we were looking even more optimistic out there. Of course, we're coming on the heels yesterday of a decent little sell-off, pretty much 1% across the board, which, given the rally we've had post-Black Monday redux out there, it's not surprising we had a little bit of dark side yesterday. Probably could argue we could do for a little bit more. But that said, markets came strong out of the gate today. Gave some of that back now. Still looking pretty strong, though. Pretty much the S&P and the Dow up about 2/3%. The NASDAQ up, closing in on 1%, about 0.85%. And just for fun, because why not? Let's look at our old friend small caps. Oh, they're up only 3%. So small caps, as they are wont to do, once again, doing their own thing. So spoiler alert, the market's looking green. Heading into the weekend post-Jackson Hole. And we have seen kind of VIX cash vacillating all over the place today, which is also kind of interesting. When the markets came roaring out of the gate, we actually saw, VIX staying a little bit firm. We did come down earlier to about a 16 handle, 16 and a quarter or so. And then when the rally seemed like it petered out and lost some steam, we saw VIX actually firming up again, up to about a 17 and a quarter, which is where it was pretty much right before we kicked off the show. It puts it up about 2.5 points from where we were this time last week. Since then, it has softened a little bit, about a half a point again. So it's about closing in on 16 3/4 now, which puts it up about exactly 2 points. So a lot of froth, a lot of churn out there on the vol scene to end the week here. All that means our friend VVIX still looking pretty frothy at about a 106 right now. It's up about 3 points from where it was this time last week. And whenever VVIX is triple digits, you got to at least sit up and pay attention. You got to keep your head on a swivel in markets like this. Listen, you can't just set it and forget it. As we go around the horn, well, let's go the way we started. Let's go out to the hinterlands of Chicago, a.k.a. the western suburbs. Mr. Once and Future Dr. VIX, sir. What caught your eye in today and indeed this week's turbulent market, sir?
September-October spread at 2.210. That's kind of interesting to me that it's pretty much holding up in that level. I think a buy in September and shorting October, just if you think there's going to be any sort of volatility between now and or just over the next 3-4 weeks, that would make an awful lot of sense to me. And that October versus November is back down to 60 cents after widening out more than $2. I have no patience. Because I did put that back on when we were around, I think it was 210 or something along those lines. And I'm like, you know what? I've got a good portion of it, and I just took it off for 70 cents. That's really what I'm focusing in on is where we're at curve wise. I just noticed that November is only like 20 cents over December. If we get if the election gets settled, and most people think that the result is going to be believed by everyone, and we're going to have somewhat of a smooth transition. If you think that's going to be the outcome of the election, shorten November and long December makes a little bit of sense. We always have that divot around December, but it might give you, but that usually flattens out as we get really close to November expiration. So that might be giving us a little bit of an opportunity. Maybe keep an eye on it for a better opportunity.
Yeah, that Nov Dece is a little bit interesting. I agree with you. That kind of caught my eye out there as well. We'll get to the term structure and the futures in a little bit, listeners. First, let's go out now to the Southern Volatility Mecca, where he's busy slinging SVIX during week one of his grand SVIX reveal. Mr. Meatball, sir, what caught your eye out there and in a fairly turbulent market this week?
Yeah, it's been certainly a turbulent market. We've seen the vol curve go from back into a contango into now back into partial backwardation, and just kind of the market is still very much on edge for some reason. I don't think it really trusts the speed of that rally, but you've got the VIX trading above the September future. September is below October, but then October is above November. November is above December, but then all November and December are below January. It's just a wackadoodle type volatility curve. But to Russell's point, I like the short OC long Dece is an interesting trade. I think the short OC long Jan is interesting. If you want to play the inauguration trade, you could do short the election, long the inauguration. There's a lot to do on this curve. And frankly, if I'm looking at the curve, the most underpriced is probably September, given the fluctuations we've had. Although over the last few days, after a really volatile couple of weeks, realized volatility has crashed. How much the market is actually moving. So the last, when we met this time last week, realized volatility, which was what, the 16th. Of course, it was the 16th. So realized volatility the previous 10 days was about 24. It's now 12. So I guess there's a reason the VIX is 1667, but it is interesting.
Interesting indeed. Since we're talking all about the curve, let's just get into it, listeners. And coming into the start of the show, things look a little bit firmer, but again, vol's very much a moving target today. So we wait 5 minutes. We'll see if this little bit of a bid that remained in the front portion of the curve, at least as we came into the start of the show, might even be gone by the end of the show, if not earlier out there. But coming into the start of the show, we had the obviously AUG rolling off the board, listener. So we got the SEP future taking the pole position. It was still up over 3/4 of a point, about 0.8 of a point. And I just took it down. I'm sure if I re-racked it, it would be even lower now. And the AUG future was up about 0.6 of a point out there. So we were just kind of talking about, does seem like there might be some opportunities. If you are comfortable doing a little bit of the old calendar out there in VIX land, then there might be some opportunities. Looking right now, yeah, the SEP future has come in about 0.15 more since we started the show. So that would put it up about 0.65 on the week. And right now, the AUG future is down 0.15 as well. So that puts it up about 0.3, about 0.45 actually on the week. So they're still coming in. Again, by the end of the show, we might see that juice, such as it is, just vanish. Mr. Meatball, we'll start with you. You're just talking about some of the opportunities you noticed for yourself out there on the curve. By the way, listeners, the curve, even though it got frothier a little bit this week, still right now, nothing even sniffing the 20 handle. The highest we get is April of next year at an 1895 right now. So if you're looking for a little bit of longer term juice, a little bit of longer term froth, at least for right now, it's not there. Obviously, it's higher than where we're looking in, spot VIX and in the front month, but it's nowhere near where it was not too long ago. Mr. Meatball, sir, what's catching your eye out there on the vol surface this week?
Yeah, like I said, I continue to think that the back end of the curve is too cheap and the front end of the curve outside of September is too expensive. I think I think a curve flattener makes a lot of sense.
A little bit of flatness, Mr. Rhoads. Do you concur, sir, or do you think that no Dees is going to be your huckleberry right now? And I love how you just dive in and out of these spreads. I love it. You're like a house cat or like a dog. Squirrel, bam, in, I'm out. I'm in, I'm out. I love it. I can empathize. I have to fight some of that urge myself sometimes.
I've got like a philosophy that I adopt, and I know I've used this quote before on here. I was fortunate enough when I was with SIBO that one of my jobs during the risk management conferences was to interview like the keynote speakers, I think people would probably pay to listen to our, because we always talk for 2 or 3 minutes after the program is over. I think people would probably get a kick out of a little bit of the inside baseball that we kick around once we're done. But whenever I had a situation like that, I would immediately, when the camera turns off, I'd always try to slip in something I was interested in. And I ask Ed Thorpe, and if people aren't familiar with him, he actually is basically the king of counting cards. And he also figured out a way to cheat roulette based on timing, etc. He built like a little computer that you could strap onto yourself and tap a button, and it would give you an idea as to where you should bet on the roulette table and gave you a little bit of an edge. But what he said when I asked where are you looking, and this is a long answer for kind of a short explanation, is look where everybody else is not looking. That's all he said. He didn't give me the inside information on something he was doing or anything else, but he just said, I've always done well when I'm looking where other people aren't. And, you look at the volume on the on the VIX futures, and you get out past the first couple of months, and the volume just kind of drops off. And the open interest drops off. It's not terrible, but it's not so bad that it's not liquid. But that's what I'm doing is I'm looking. Everybody's always focused on the first couple of months. In both V stocks and VIX, I'm always looking at the first 4 months and seeing how they're all priced against each other, because it does look like things get out of whack periodically. And that again, I think that's where some of the opportunities pop up. And those opportunities might just pop up not because somebody's got a funny outlook that expects volatility 3 days before November expiration or something like that, but it's a function of some of the bigger option trades that come in that will change the shape of the curve as the market makers are hedging themselves. And the market makers, don't care that that they just bought a bunch of October and bumped the price 20 cents relative to September, and that's just a hypothetical. But that's why I've been looking where I've been looking is why I keep, and of course the election is going to make us look out there as well. But yeah, that's where the idea is behind the farther out on the curve is. And, I know this is not part of the program, but when I'm taking a look at short dated index options, it's very difficult to get an edge in the options that expire today or in the next couple of days, but you go out 3, 4, and 5 days and there's an edge there as well. So,
for sure.
Look where other people are not looking. And I know that was a really long answer, and I apologize, but
I think we've talked about that. And we talked about that in some detail at the OptionBit conference, Russell. I don't know if you were there when we had that big long discussion, but there is a huge edge in options that have 5 to 13 days to expire. I'll leave it at that.
Yep. And I've been taking advantage of it. We'll leave it at that.
Good job.
That's different program.
That's the one area
you're going to have me back on the Pro Q&A.
Yes.
Just fighting your way back into the seat. But that makes a certain amount of sense. Everyone's been fixated on October since the start of the year. So you're like, you let them all play there. Let them all play in the blood red water of October. I'm going to go elsewhere to the blue water of, let's say, December or November and see what's cooking out there. There is a certain logic to that, sir, that I could certainly see. Let's see what we see out here in the realm of VIX options, shall we, listeners? Is it a banger, explosive day out there? You know, we've been delivering on the volume front pretty much every day for the last couple of weeks. Pretty much the foot has been on the accelerator full tilt ever since that little dust up back on August 5th. I mean, that just is reflected in the ADV and VIX, which is a seasonally ridiculous 1.22 million contracts, up another 30,000 contracts from this time last week. Again, I keep beating this dead horse, but this is the time of year, listeners, when VIX should be nowhere near this. VIX should be like 450,000 contracts a day. Everybody's in the Hamptons or the south of France. Nobody's slinging VIX calls, yet kind of the polar opposite right now, except for today. You know, we were talking earlier this week, maybe people are keeping their powder dry, waiting for Jackson Hole on Friday. Well, Jackson Hole has come and gone now, and we're still not seeing that powder get lit up. Only 267,000 contracts on the tape today, so kind of a light day and actually a little bit lighter week. I mean, again, still a banger for August, don't get me wrong. Couple of days with an M handle on them, so that's nothing to sneeze at, but today at least looking light. We'll get there in a second. First, let's break down the top 10 size positions. What is open for size right now in VIX land? Let's find out, shall we, listeners? Still cost you $218,000 to break into the top 10. That is also extremely beefy for this time of year, listeners. You usually expect that to be 50, 60,000 contracts less. So that's a pretty sizable bar to cross just to break into the top 10 in August in VIX. But that's where we are. Also this week, 4 puts once again in our top 10, listeners. So puts still making their presence known out there. Number 10 is our first of 4 puts, 218,000 of the SEP 13 puts, followed by number 9, 221,000 of the SEP 35. So right back at it. Number 8, 237,000 of the DEES 42 halves. So if the SEP 35 is not doing it for you, allow me to give you another quarter and another 7.5 handles to the upside with some DEES 42 halves. You like those, listeners? Number 7, here comes our put strip. 253,000 of the SEP 16 puts. Number 6, 290,000 of the SEP 15 puts. And number 5, 346,000 of the SEP 17 puts. Number 4, the rest of it, listeners, all calls all the time. 357,000 of the SEP 17s. Number 3, 358,000 of the SEP 20s. Number 2, 381,000 of the SEP 45s. And the big dog in VIX land yet again this week, 395,000 of the SEP 25 calls. Let's get out there to the action today. Actually, no, before we get there, what am I doing? I'm getting ahead of myself. I am depriving the people of what they're paying the big bucks to listen to, because it is time for Russell's Weekly Rundown.
Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown. Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown.
All right, Mr. Rhoads, you kind of slept on the Russell's Weekly Rundown last week, but now is your chance to make it up to us. We expect 34 minutes of weekly rundown goodness. Go, sir.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants 34 minutes.
I think your mom might want that.
But I do want to, we kid around about this, this part of the show, and we have really fun music, which, boy, do my students think that's hilarious, because I have students that have started listening to this program. But the weekly, again, the little, long explanation I gave about how I've been looking at the markets. That's why I don't like. That's kind of why I like looking at the weeklies, because again, that's not an area. I think there are probably a lot of traders that are listening right now that if they can set their screen up to only show monthly options, they're probably only showing the monthly options on. So they're not even looking in this area. And earlier this week, nobody was looking in this area as well. There were only 6 weekly trades of 100 contracts or more. On Tuesday, there were only 4. So not a whole lot going on there. It looks like somebody sold the what's that number? Come on, Russell, do some math. Looks like somebody sold, I believe, 150 of the September 25th 10 calls for $6.47. and that's when VIX was at six, or when that future actually was at around 1675. They actually showed them at a discount, which yeah, I don't know. That's that. Each to his own. We'll just allow that to go. But that's the trade that I'm not particularly wild about for this week. Especially, I do think that the market's probably going to be braced for some volatility going into September and October. We'll have news items, et cetera. I've got the data from when we got our, what do they always call them around the elections? We'll have some sort of October surprise.
Yep.
Either around Kamala, or I can't even imagine what a surprise would be around Trump. I think the FBI investigating Hillary's laptop was the one that we got then, and I think the Hunter Biden thing was the one that we got the last election. It worked once, it didn't work again, but one of those October surprises, or the potential possibility of one, might keep VIX a little elevated in late September and early October. So I'd worry about that trade. Plus, I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because they sold it at a discount to intrinsic value from what I can see on the tape. Wednesday, sorry, somebody sold and I like the bearish first week of September trades. We will not have had the employment number yet. The FOMC, which we have a pretty darn good idea of what they're going to do. That's going to be a couple of weeks after the September 4th expiration. Somebody sold the 16 call for $1.50 and bought the 18 call for $1. They took in a 50-cent credit when VIX was at 16.12. I think that's a pretty smart trade. Thursday, this one's on the fence. I like it because it's super cheap, but I just don't see it working out. And which means now I have to do a high crystal ball guess when we get to that today. Somebody bought 150 of the August 28th, Russell's birthday, 14.5 puts for 6 cents. And then they sold 150 of the August 28th, 13 puts for a penny. Cost them a nickel. I don't really know why they sold the 13s. I'm sure I would. I'm not going to sell a bunch of 13s for a penny with what I'm getting ready to say, but I'm pretty sure we're not going to be under 13 next week for VIX. You never know. I mean, we came down very quickly off of that move above, move up to the 60s, probably the quickest we ever have. So I'm kind of neutral on that trade. I would have just bought the 14.5 puts and wasted the penny on that. And then today, a couple of opposite trades, and I really don't like either of them. Somebody bought 400 of the August 28th 18 calls for 51 cents. VIX was at 1637. I don't think there's any potential catalyst that's going to push us up there, but of course surprises get us moving even more. And then also, and then somebody sold 450 of the August 28th 24 calls. These are two completely separate trades for 21 cents. Now, I just said, this is me being an economist, and I can pull out a snippet and sound really smart next week. I hope that, and I always say this, I hope that these 24 calls are teamed up, this short 24 call is teamed up with something else. And that, they're just not sitting out there, because we saw what VIX could do. And if we get, I would hate holding something like that over the weekend. So a long and a short trade using August 28th calls, and I really don't like either of them. So I'll be right about one of them probably.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't think I love any of those ones you broke down there. I'm kind of
I know.
Nothing floating my boat and making me go, that's interesting. I think you're right also about the October surprise. That's why I kind of laugh when I hear people talking with certainty about poll results right now, several months out from the election, and we all know who's going to win, or it's absurd. They don't know who's going to win the day of the election. Go back to recent elections. They've had exit polls on the day of the election that were wrong. So yeah, they don't know until the last minute, until the last vote is counted, who the hell wins these things. So the notion that you could say this person's a winner right now. Remember, you forget people were pricing Hillary in as the victor, way ahead of 2016. Then of course, the Comey stuff happened, and there we go. The rest is history out there. So yeah, it's the notion that people are celebrating or angry right now off some early polling is patently absurd, just like some of the prints we're seeing out there in VIX today. Let's get to it. Like I said, today a light day. 23,000 is the big dog today of the SEP 14 puts. I think people are finally just exhausted. They haven't they haven't been going to the Hamptons all week or to the south of France because stuff's actually been popping off. So I think today after Jackson Hole, they said, I'm out. And they're all gone because nothing's printing today, listeners. 23,000 is the big dog of the SEP 14 puts, followed by number 2, 20,000 of the October 16 puts. We were talking about 18 puts last week. This week, it is the 16 puts. Number 3, 20,000 as well of the October 15 puts. Number 4, 18,000 of the SEP 30s. And number 5, 17,000 of the SEP 20s. I did just notice, listeners, as well. This doesn't make it into our top 5. It's not even really in the top 10. But this might get my vote for trade of the day / week. You know, we talk a lot about junk calls in VIX. And that usually means your 55s, your 60s. Maybe if you're getting outlandish, your 70s, 80s, 90s. If you super crazy town, you're in the pars or 110s. I don't think I've ever seen anyone trade the 180 calls in VIX before. Yet they went up 5,000 times today. The Jan, just regular Jan, not even Jan 2026 or anything. Jan 2025, 180 calls. Somebody gobbled up 5,000 of those bad boys today because there's no way they sold them for a dime. They bought 5,000 of them for a dime today, listeners. And now we've talked junk calls before. That might be the mother of all junk calls. I'll need to chat with our buddy Mr. Matt about how that back tests because he's been the biggest proponent I know of this kind of garbage, but he likes it 60s to 80s usually. This is over 2x that, so this might be a bridge too far even for him. I don't know. Mr. Meatball, are you down with some Jan 180s for a dime, sir? How does that float your boat?
I don't get it. I mean, do you have to for a dime? Aren't there other options you can buy that would also be a dime that are closer? I don't understand. Like the I don't. I'm confused and scared, Mark.
You're confused and scared and just weeping in a corner by yourself.
Well, the 3,000 of the 100s have gone up today. Was that a ratio?
That's a hell of a ratio if that's the case. I don't see any other legs with this, but maybe. I mean, anything is on the board at this point when we're talking the 180s.
Let me see here.
Let's dig deeply into this.
So the Jan. I'm scared, Mark. I'm scared.
Hold me. If we were in the same room together, I'd have to consult
hold
you.
Me. You know what, Mark? You know what? They went up. So the 5, they went up about a minute before the 180s went up. So there's some relation there.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the story is. So the 100s went up 20 cents. The 180s went up 10 cents. So I don't know. There's a relationship there. I don't know what, but there is a relationship.
Are you telling me
now
I could buy 80 handles in the VIX for a dime? Done all day long. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
80 full handles. Never mind that they're the useless vestigial handles.
On a 3x5 ratio.
Yes, 3x5.
Why not?
Why wouldn't you do that trade is the question. Listen.
Why didn't they do the full 1x2 is my question.
Yeah, crazy. Listeners, if you're not stopping listening to this right now just to put that trade in, what are you doing with your life, listeners? That is
Russell, you got the is this you?
It's not me, but both of those executions you're talking about that are kind of back to back, they're a penny off the offer.
I know.
I wonder if this is a 100, 180 stupid.
Are you going to throw a stupid up there?
What? I knew you were going to love that. I knew you guys were. Oh, no. Think it might be anyway. It's a stupid.
If that's
and Mark Sebastian, you're right. If this trade pays off because they're buying those hundreds. if this trade pays off, I've got there's one neighbor out here in Hinsdale that grew up in Tennessee like I did, and the man has the most impressive gun locker you have ever seen in your life. And I'm hunkering down in his basement.
You're going to raid that gun locker if these trades are if that's a stupid. I'm just calling it right now. That is the greatest VIX trade I've ever seen. If it's the par 180 ratio stupid, I am here for all of it. It is fantastic.
That is something to behold.
That means he paid 20 cents, and then he paid a dime less for 80 handles away. Everything about it is just fantastic. Listen, are you down for that? Are you down for a little par 180 stupid? You like the vertical better for a dime? Or are you just straight buying the 180s for a dime? I don't know. Let us know. Maybe we'll just ask you, what are your thoughts on the 180s? Because that might be my VIX print of the year. I just love everything about that, listeners. Someone that also shows you a little bit quieter week. We have a little bit of time to ruminate on some of the, shall we say, fun prints out there. Let's get to yesterday. A little bit more paper on the tape, listeners. 46,000 of the OCK 20s, followed by 40,000 of the OCK 16 puts. Number 3, 32,000 of the OCK 19 puts. Number 4, 30,000 of the OCK 14 puts. So quite a juicy put strip yesterday in October. And number 5, 30,000 of the NOV 24s. Right as I say that, NOV call sneaking at the bottom. Wednesday, I think I skipped Thursday. Let's go to Thursday first. 427,000, the big dog on Thursday. 32,000 of the SEP 50s. 23,000 for number 2 of the SEP 13 puts. Number 3, 20,000 of the SEP 12 puts. Number 4, 17,000 of the SEP 13 half puts. And rounding out the top 5 on Thursday, about 15,000 of the SEP 20s. Man, those Jan 180s really threw me off my game, listeners. Now we get to Tuesday, the big dog day of the week. 1.41 million on the tape on Tuesday. So not messing about, as the kids say, of course, heading into expiration there in settlement. 84,000 of the AUG 15 puts coming in for the number 1 spot. Number 2, 75,000 exactly. That's interesting. Of the April 42 halves. So back to that 42 half strike, listeners. Number 3, 59, almost 60,000 of the AUG 30s. Number 4, 46,000 of the October 19s. And rounding out the top 5, 44,000 of the OCK 16 puts. Monday, no slouch either. 1.04 million of total, I should say. 71,000 is the big dog of the October 20s. Number 2, 68,000 of the AUG 16s. Number 3, 50,000 of the AUG 15s. Number 4, 49,000 of the AUG 15 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on a decently active Monday, 47,000 of the SEP 30s. Mr. Meatball, I know it's hard to draw your eye away from those Jan 180s. They're just like a black hole that sucks up all the oxygen in the room. But outside of that magnificent trade, anything else catching your eye in VIX land this week?
Well, today we've got a lot of the biggest activity has been in puts. They're buying October puts and September puts. If you want to look at what they did yesterday, obviously VIX caught a little bit of a bid. Biggest trade, we had the SEP 50 calls going up 29,000 times. Always got to love that type of trade. 19 cents. Somebody buying the December 85 calls 10,000 times. Another winner. On the 21st, that was another kind of interesting day. Biggest trade was the November 24 calls and the October 2031 call spread, it looks like. Kind of interesting there. I don't hate that. You also had some 14 puts going up in October. Tuesday, let's see what we got on Tuesday. Biggest trade, August, 75 calls traded 80. August, 42.5 calls on Tuesday into August. No, these are April. I'm sorry. April, 42.5 calls. Somebody bought 75,000 of them for 82 cents on Tuesday. That one is a hedge, I would go out and say. And you have some more October going up. Looks like they bought the 29, 42.5, some 82, the 1845, I don't know, what is this? This is the 18. the 18s, 45s, and 30s all went up. So I'm not sure what the story is with that one. And then you had just pretty busy day on Tuesday, and then Monday's action. Biggest trade, got a buyer of the October 20s. I don't hate the October 20s for $1.76. That's not terrible. I continue to think that if you want to go long a VIX call, I really like the November 20s for like $2.25. Open interest there is about 130,000. So there are people that agree with me, but I like that call. And, I rolled out of my October 25 puts and into the 19 puts.
Oh, we were talking 18 last week. You didn't go 18. You went 19. Okay.
I went 19.
A little bit meatier, a little bit more meat on the bone. I like it. Since you're talking,
I wanted something meatier.
Since you're talking those OCT20s for $1.76, we did point those out on the Monday option block as being an interesting trade. So that became our flash poll earlier this week, listeners. We said, last week we were talking about everybody loving those OC18 puts. They traded about 100,000 times for prices around $2.15, but they kind of traded all over the place. Paper mostly buying those. And then on Monday, we saw that big print, 64,000 of the OC20s for $1.76. So we said, interesting, two kind of different viewpoints. Which one do you like better, gun to your head? And our audience sided with the call side, Mr. Meatball. 60, almost 61% saying they'd rather buy the OC20s for $1.76 than the OC18 puts for $2.15. What do you think, sir?
I think they're wrong.
Well, clearly you bought the 19 puts, so yeah. But you just said you like the OC20s, so I guess our audience agrees with you there too.
I like the Nove 20s.
But you said you like the OC20s for $1.76 as well, even though you said you like the Novas better. You did. But yeah, they like the OC apparently, so there you go. Nana boo-boo to you. As we keep rolling, let's get out to the Meatball's new favorite stomping grounds. Of course, I'm talking SVIX. By the way, speaking of our audience, they're all over these Jan 180s. They can't make up their mind. 60% want to buy those right now. We do have a flash poll live right now, listeners. Only up for about an hour, though. So if you've listened on the podcast, you will miss it. That's why you got to be hanging out at options throughout the week, listeners. 60% of you want to buy those Jan 180s for a dime, which I guess, what the hell do you do with that strike, right? It's one of those things you buy it, I guess. You can't really buy it. You can't really sell it. But 60% of you want to buy it right now. Let's go out to SVIX. Kind of been all over the place this week as well. Popped hard earlier this week, got almost to a 33, about 32 3/4. Good day for me. I got to unload the last remnants of my SVIX calls at the high there. So that was kind of nice. We'll talk about that more in detail on options oddities coming up in a little bit. I've been kind of waiting to reload the gun. SVIX got beaten up yesterday. Back sub 30, 29.60. And now, of course, post Jackson Hole, we did see it shoot up to a little bit north of 31 this morning. And then come crashing back to earth. That back down to about a 30 handle. And now slowly, as we're going on with the show, clawing its way back up to about a 30 3/4. That still puts it down a little over a point, about 1.15 points from where it was this time last week. In terms of paper out there in SVIX, not lighting the world on fire out there. Today is kind of just a day of rest. Everyone's just kind of worn out from the last few weeks. Only 10,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV remains 23,000. That's unchanged. Doesn't seem like we're going to get there today unless we get some size prints. The big dog out there in SVIX right now, 5,100 of the AUG 35s. And these are weeklies. These are going out today. So spoiler alert, I don't think we're getting there. We also have 3,800 for number 2 of the AUG 30 puts also expiring today. Those are actually looking dicey as well. Hopefully they got out of those this morning. I'll have to go look and see, but it doesn't seem like it. So yeah, kind of two size positions here that are probably going to go the way of the dodo, and folks probably going to be sad campers. But Mr. Meatball, I know you've been slinging SVIX hot and heavy ever since you revealed your new bit of strategery out there. What's catching your eye in SVIX, sir?
Yeah, it came out of the gate on Monday hot, and then has had a pretty rough week as we've seen the VIX futures curve really oscillate between, flat to backward to back in a slight contango. And so it's just been kind of holding place. We're kind of it's kind of in breakout mode. So where it's sitting right now, and where the volatility complex is trading, the market looks like it is going to make a wild move one direction or the other, either a really hard rally or a potentially stunning sell-off.
Stunning sell-off. Mr. Rhoads, same question for you, sir. I know you were out of your SVIX. I think you got back in when all the brouhaha happened and we got cheaper. Have you been writing calls? Or what have you been up to out in SVIX since last we chatted, sir?
I wrote some calls earlier this week that expired today that are out of the money, and I just bought them back. So I benefited from that spike a bit. But I have a full SVIX position. I know it's not the fund we're talking about, but I just for time's sake, I'll just mention that in the chat they asked if I was going to do UVIX over the weekend. Heck yeah, I'm doing UVIX over the weekend. That's the system.
Heck
so
yeah,
that's where I am on SVIX right now.
Heck yeah, baby. So just give us some strike. Were you like 35 strike? What were you selling in the calls?
Well, I sold the 33s.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Good business there, sir. Getting a little tight, but you almost got there, but not quite on Monday there. So taking advantage of a little bit of juice. There was some juice to be gotten out there in SVIX this week. Did you get any listeners? I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know. UVIX, Mr. Rhoads just talking about this, the sibling, the dark half of SVIX out there. 470 when we kicked off the show, up about 0.4 of a point. Let's see if it's keeping any of that right now. Oh, no, it's gone right back down to about 4.5 now. So it's given up pretty much half of that. It's only up about 0.2 of a point right now. That's kind of what we expect once the news is out on a Friday for UVIX. You expect to see it give up the ghost. 25,000 contracts on the tape today. The ADV is 36,000. That's still moving in the right direction. That's up about 3,000. Let's just see really quickly. What's the hot thing in UVIX today? It's 3,100 of the 5 calls expiring next week. Those are all opening. So, and then also 2,300 of the 5 calls expiring today. So maybe a little bit of a roll action out there. Either way, a lot of 5 calls lighting it up out there today. Don't think we're going to hit the 5 handle today, but at least any more after did we kiss it this morning and all the madness? How high did we get? We got up to 476. So got close, but no cigar. The big position out there right now is 8,500 of the October 5 calls. So if past is prologue, folks are probably buying those, but intriguing stuff out there. Mr. Rhoads, you said you're doing your UVIX again, but I think it's important to point out you're doing it pretty much in conjunction with your SVIX. If you didn't have your SVIX, would you still do it?
Maybe not in the same size, but yes, I would, but maybe not in the same size. Like I've been matching them up dollar for dollar, where the longest I'll get is 50% of my SVIX position. So if I got $20,000 in SVIX, I'd buy $10,000 worth of UVIX for the weekend.
There we go. Interesting stuff, dude. I know.
There is thought behind the madness, I promise. And I've got 3 little bubbles on my phone. Somebody in the oh my gosh, I asked about the 100 180s that traded, and they came back with me with the 2100 2180 rut options.
Oh,
they didn't even think I was talking about VIX.
Yeah, why would you?
Oh, wow.
It's that ridiculous. Should you write to them, say, by the way, did a par 180?
I'm doing that. It just popped up while I was talking slowly to see what popped up. Sorry, man.
That would be hilarious if you asked them. Stupid.
All right, let me mute and try to make some.
So
I can't text and talk.
I do have a question on this. So obviously UVIX is the 2x against the SVIX, and so that's why you're putting 50% of the position on. So in let's say a crash scenario, with, like similar to what we saw on Monday, how does that play out? Do you get convexity on the UVIX against the SVIX where that position ends up making you money, or does
because of the inversion.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, really because of the inversion, but but I take it off almost immediately right around the open. I dicked around and missed the open on that one spike day by about a dime, but when you're making 9 points, you're okay with that.
Yeah, I don't think you're sweating a dime on back on the 5th. Yeah, that was the best day in recorded history to do that trade, sir. So I don't think you're sweating that one too much. Let's see if we're sweating the rest of our ETPs. Nice one. It's a little bit quieter week. We can kind of get to the full gamut out there, listeners. I know a lot of you folks sling UVXY. Doesn't always make it on the show because it seems like we just did UVIX. Why do UVXY? But hey, you know what? Nonetheless, for you UVXY Defense Force folks, UVXY 2330 up about 0.8 of a point right now. Looking kind of light out there on the volume front, 62,000 today. That's against an ADV of 119, so it's pretty much exactly halfway to its ADV, so it doesn't seem like it's going to be getting there today. The ADV is also moving in the wrong direction, down about 6,000 from this time last week, but still obviously a lot more liquidity than a lot of these other ETPs we're talking about out here. The big dog in UVXY right now looks like pre-split adjusted Jan 25s, so 19,000 of those. So do with those what you will. Then we have 8,200 of the regular SEP 25s out there. So 25 strike, holding a lot of fascination for people out there today. The big dog out there today in UVXY, 3,800 of the AUG 25s expiring today, and that is opening. So 25 strike. People are obsessed with this out here in UVXY. I also got 3,800 of the 23 half puts. That's also opening. So they line up pretty well. So maybe we got a bit of a, if it's a strangle, you're paying a lot of money for that. So let's hope it's a risk reversal, something along those lines. But either way, that seems to be the big dog out here. And then winding up our ETPs this week, let's go out to VXX, another one that haven't really had a chance to make it on the show that often. VXX 4670 right now, up about 1.2 points. In terms of volume, it's a decent day, nothing to write home about. 24,000 contracts on the tape. That's against an ADV of 36,000, which again, VXX, everything else has been roaring from a volume perspective. And VXX has kind of been moving the other way. It's 36,000 contracts a day. That's down 11,000 from this time a week ago. So for whatever reason, folks are playing in all the other vol products except for VXX right now, which is kind of interesting. Let's see really quickly today. The big dog out there today, 2,000 of the 42 puts expiring next week. That's a fair amount of decay. That's opening as well. That's a fair amount of decay to come out in a week, but we've seen crazier things. In terms of size positions, the big dog in VXX, this looks like it's pre-split adjusted as well. SEP 10 puts, 25,000 of those. But again, they're talking pre-split, so adjust that. That's pretty much the 40 strike, listeners. But good luck getting out of those things. I have some experience doing post-adjustment options in these ETPs, and it is not for the faint of heart. Mr. Rhoads, anything catching your eye in UVXY or VXX this week, sir?
I've been sticking with my buddies UVIX and SVIX. I did run the UVIX stuff with UVXY and VXX, and you still made money. It wasn't nearly as much on the spikes. But if you're more of a fan of those two instruments, buy-in for the weekend actually works over a long period of time as well.
There you go, Mr. Meatball, sir. Any joy for VXX or UVXY these days, or is your attention all glued to SVIX?
Well, I like VXX when we've got contango right now because of the juice in the options and the overall price of VXX. It actually has room to drop. Same thing with the UVXY being back in the 20s. One of the problems with the UVIX trading it right now is that it's so inexpensive that it's hard to make relative dollars trading it. So yeah, those do have my attention.
All right, listeners, you know what always has our attention is the crystal ball, so let's get to it.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crystal ball, where we try to wrestle with what the vol gods have in store for us next week. Really quickly, let's pay off some of the questions of the week because they are very germane to vol right now. Of course, our flash poll, are you folks buying or selling those Jan 180s? Still, 60% of you want to buy them. 40% want to sell them. Is there any right or wrong answer to that at the end of the day? Probably not, listeners. They're both equally ridiculous for different reasons. And who knows, maybe, I don't know if anyone's modeled that far up the chain what kind of garbage pop you can get on those, but you can get a two-banger on the, I don't know. I mean, maybe, but we should model those back to Monday of the 5th and see how they looked then. But yeah, that's certainly one for the record books there, listeners. You know what hasn't been one for the record books, thankfully? It's the DNC. Of course, there was convention time in Chicago this week. I was only half joking on the show last week. Let's hope there's a show to be had next week because they did transform the city into an armed fortress over the course of the last week. I've seen an army of police, bike cops, buses full of cops, vans full of cops, just armies of police, literal streets, not just shut down, but walled off and then fenced off, and then have car barricades on top of them. So gunboats going up and down the river this week. It's an intriguing time to be in Chicago, to put it mildly. Thankfully, looks like it's mostly over now. And We had a couple of dust ups, including one right here near the studio, which was unfortunate. But outside of that, didn't really seem like it got too out of hand. They came, I think, loaded for bear this week, and it seems like it kind of tamped down most of the madness. So that was good. We didn't have a situation with National Guard on the streets again, the bridge is up, all sorts of craziness. We just had an army of police on the street this week instead. But that was a question at the beginning of the week. We said, hey, DNC kicks off when we posted this on Monday. Do you think it has a chance to really impact markets or vol, or just a dog and pony show? 81% of you right now saying it's just a dog and pony show. That clearly is the answer. 19% said it might move VIX and XPX. We didn't really see that. It really was just a dog and pony show. So out to the realm of VIX guessing we go, listeners. The easiest part of the show. And as we're ending the show, listeners, let's do a little rundown here. The NASDAQ up 1.1%, S&P up a full 0.8% now, and the Dow up 0.8% as well. That means our pal VIX Cash turning back to the dark side at about a 16.25 as we're ending the show. So let's run through. Russell was exactly a point away at 17.25. Noel from Convex was on last week. He was at a 16 even, so he's 0.25 away, not too shabby. I was at a 15.65, so 0.6 away, no joy for me. And the Meatballs palindromic nonsense, 14.41. No joy for him either, so no winner this week. Looks like the closest really was Noel, who clearly is not here. So the next closest was pretty much me, so I guess I'll go first, because why not? I'll set the table for everybody else out here, listeners. So are we going to have a little bit of a dust up? Or are we going to have vol kind of slowly erode now that we've got Jackson Hole in the rear view mirror? We do still have, the 28th. So we do still have NVIDIA on the docket. And as we all know, outside of the Fed, the big dog in the market is NVIDIA. So that could certainly, they come out and say, you know what, this whole AI thing's a scam. We can't make any money on it. That would certainly add some juice to the market. So that is certainly a wild card. The rest of the earnings season, the big names mostly behind us. It seems like we're in the dog days of summer. So if past is prologue, we should continue to erode. And I'm going to say that's where we're heading, barring any sort of really aberrant report from NVIDIA. I'm going to say this time next week, I'm going to say 14.65. So coming for it this time. Actually, you know what? Meatball's probably going to go palindromic again, so I'll be nice. I'll give him a little bit of extra breathing room. 14.75. There we go. All right, Mr. Rhoads, you were next closest, sir. What do you got for us?
I'm gonna go. What did you say? I apologize. I've got more color on the 180, the 100 and the 180 calls, so I've been a little bit distracted. But what did you say?
14.75 is what I said.
Okay, I was gonna say 15.50. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't completely overlapping with you.
Nope.
I did think under a little bit of pressure, and I'll give the other Mark a little reminder that next weekend's the Friday before Labor Day.
Of course, if you're 15.50, if he wants to do his palindromic nonsense, and you're right on top of him as well. Mr. Meatball, sir, what do you got for us?
All right, so you're 50?
That's where Russell is. Yeah. I'm at 14.75.
You're at what, 14 what?
75.
14.75? All right, well, let's go for, if you're both lower, I'll go higher. I'll go about here, actually. I'm going to go 16.61.
Oh, feeling a little bit of NVIDIA juice, are you?
Yeah, sure. Let's go crazy.
Yeah, sure. All right. That music means that's going to do it for us. Before we go, Mr. Rhoads, you said you have more color on those 180s.
Yes.
What do you got for us?
Yeah, a couple, and I'll be quick, I promise. It was a stupid. They bought both of them.
It was?
Oh, my. And then you asked for a little modeling, so I pulled the quote recap from the early and opening, the opening half hour or so on August 5th. And those options were consistently 4-cent bid by 32 cents offered.
So you can't get out of them.
So if the exact same thing happens on Monday, if you bought those options, you ain't going to make any money.
You're not making any money. Jesus. Oh,
well, no. What would those look like in a COVID blow-up type scenario, though? Those might go to 50 cents. $1?
Maybe, but you got to get January as the front month, man.
Well, maybe that. What if they're? Well, here's why they do January. Inauguration.
Everything about this might be my new favorite VIX trade of all time. So just to recap, listeners, it was 3,000 of the pars, correct? And then
3,000 of the pars.
Of the one. They bought them both.
The hundos.
20 cents by a dime, 3,000 by 5,000 times. So 8,000 total options they consumed, listeners. My goodness, that is a glorious thing. Listen, that's going to go on my end-of-year VIX recap list for certain. Wow. I don't think I've ever seen. Certainly not a stupid. That's just, wow. My statements on stupids are well known out there by this point. I won't repeat them, but wow, that's just wow, listeners. That's going to do it for us on Vol Views. I need to go digest that. Mark needs to go sit in a quiet corner. He's kind of scared now. Mr. Meatball, while you're recovering from that ridiculous trade, where should folks go if they want more pit goodness?
Just follow me on Twitter at OptionPit. You will be a happy camper.
Yeah, and you too can follow along with that Par 180 Stupid coming to a
Indeed.
Pit newsletter near you. And Mr. Rhoads, if folks want more Rhoads goodies, where should they go? Like that color. Where should they go? What should they do?
Twitter is always X/Twitter is always the best place to find me. It's just my full name, and then beyond that, I'm linked on a bunch of things that were being tweeted out during class today. So I'm sorry, class. I'm in academic mode during the podcast today. So that's how you find me.
There you go, listeners. If you're not following him, you can't handle spelling that name. I get it. It's a lot of syllables and consonants there. Just follow us at Options. We tweet out stuff, Lincoln Russell all the time, so you could give a follow there as well. That music means that is going to do it for us on Vol Views. It's also going to do it for us, all you podcast folks. Hope you had a great week out there. If you're hanging out in the pro hangout, I'll be back in a little bit, holding court on all sorts of options oddity goodness. I'll talk about those SVIX calls and some other fun stuff in a little bit. If you haven't gotten through the velvet rope yet, the optionsinsider.com/pro, the place to go to learn more, listeners. Kick the tires and light the fires. Then we're back again on Monday for a little bit of the old option block, all the way through with your usual assortment of content throughout the week until another Friday rolls around and it's time for another Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.